It's 2018 on the 27th of June, and it's still occurring in this community where there are people still of hate crime and that are regressing into undemocratic, unhumanitarian, uncivilized conduct that is offensive to the Church, children and the Constitution and COVID-19 protocol. So those people that are of obstruction are obstructing the progress that they're taking credit for with my humanitarian contributions to this country that was formulated via creative intellectual property theft and offences against the faith prior to 2019, when my son was illegally separated from me in 2017. So there are people that aren't able to come to the table, I suppose, and put the record straight. The spin doctors are still causing discomfort, unrest and disrespect in a modern day and age when we're all supposed to be mature adults and not petty or childish or irresponsible with petty grievances or with I suppose incalculable damages. So there are people that are apparently discomforted as much as I'm discomforted, but unfortunately with regard to the local government authorities, local governing bodies, there's been legislation that has arisen from me that is quite disrespectful to Royal Protocol, to be in any way I suppose offensive to the Constitution or to the legislation locally and nationally and internationally. So there are people that are being quite weighty, which means that they're kind of out of place, really, taking on a burden or taking on a challenge or taking on a duty that isn't actually fitting to their position. Hate crime is really unsafe with the circumstances that are around this matter with the past 2 decades. There have been constant efforts of disharmony, and those people have been of evasion and exacerbation that is unsafe for any fellowship that I represent in a humanitarian capacity that is for sanity and sobriety. So those that have disrespected my sanity and sobriety values, principles, etc., are disrespecting progress and they're disrespecting mental health. So those that are resorting to the cheap tact of slander or false reporting or exacerbation with actually not being mature enough or responsible enough or professional or courteous enough are really not showing this area in a positive light. There are people that have not been making amends or restitution or reparations, and it's been really childish. And as I've said, there are people that are living off my wealth and health recovery and disrespecting sanity and sobriety, and they are not qualified to be taking credit intellectually or creatively for a portfolio that they have no hand or act or part to play in, that they've taken credit for. So that is legislation 2019, and there's the local legislation as well. So I'm confronted with people being of non-action or inaction, and that's like burying your head in the sand. And there have already been people buried, unfortunately, as a consequence of these people in society that don't have respect for life, human life, or human values. And they're espousing Christian values, but in the meantime, they're practicing behind the pulpit, as they say, colloquially and metaphorically, with practices that they're not within a remit to be practicing. So there's an issue about people that are displaying antisocial behaviour, not respecting the peace, not respecting civil society principles, and that are just it's petty, you know, it's actually petty with the greater scheme of things that have occurred from my humanitarian contributions north and south of the border. It's very disrespectful to the reputation of the democracy and the neighbouring British Isles on the British population. It's disrespectful to the health and wealth recovery that came from me. So I'm merely mesmerised, to say the least, that people would think I'm blowing anyone's trumpet, but correcting the facts that are obviously waylaid in a circumstance of people taking credit, as I've said, for intellectual property, humanitarian contributions to society that they have no hand or act or part to play in. So this evening, it's another sad sign of the times. There are people choosing to be of exacerbation and disrespect to the first world principles. They're disrespecting first world values. They're disrespecting democracy. And as I've said, there is a matter around the COVID-19 protocol that originated from me being offended as well. So those people that are speaking ill and making society ill with petty grievances and egotistical ambitions on other people's or of other people's portfolios might be a little bit mindful of the casualties they've incurred with their choices and their initiatives that haven't been respectful of this community. So any local governing authorities that are aware of the legislation locally and nationally and internationally might, if not respect World Protocol, consider the democratic constitution we have that came from my forefathers. And, you know, speaking ill of people, that is really unsafe. As we know, we have defamation laws, and those people that are ducking and diving from the law haven't seen already how the law has a natural way of meeting people with, you know, grievances against the law that have been conducted unduly and inexcusably. So those that have resorted to slander might be careful about their choice of action from now on. I'm aware of the obstructions I'm being confronted with. My husband is a missing person, as I've mentioned, and so is my child. So those people that don't have respect for human or family values might consider their position in the first world and where they consider themselves in the hierarchy and the greater scheme of things. There are people being really rude, putting their nose out of joint and putting their nose in places where they're not welcome. And those people that are antagonising the harmony of democracy are not fit for society and they're not welcome. So those that are living off my legislation, my health and wealth recovery that's been frauded, the COVID-19 protocol, those people that are comforting and luxuriating themselves from their theft of my credentials and achievements and accomplishments and contributions to society might be really conscientious as citizens in a democracy how unsafe they're making the world that they have already damaged irrevocably. So if there's no lesson going to be learned, it just beggars belief how these people are going to be spending time, effort and energy disrespecting the sanity and sobriety principles while conducting insane and inexcusable conduct that you wouldn't see from 7-year-olds in a childhood playground. Children at the age of reason, I'd say, would have more smart, intelligent contributions to be making, and that's coming from the role of an educator. So those people that are in my proximity disrespecting what has come from me, you might think of the damages done to my little baby boy's upbringing, illegally separated from me simply due to people coveting my farm holdings and disrespecting my holy matrimony, still legally binding, even though there are corrupt, covetous misrepresentations from the law that would dispute the authenticity or the longevity or the status of the church and my husband and I, which they're not very safe interrupting or intruding or interfering in. So people should be really careful about the protocol around royalty, COVID-19 and petty grievances in a very big issue around what has happened to this country since my son was illegally separated from me. He's still a missing person, and there's still people disrespecting this situation, which is mesmerising that it would be supported, facilitated, or in any way entertained. And the entertainment scene has been affected, as well as we know with the arts being compromised. We know these things. So anyway, the role of the mental health practitioners hopefully are aware of how unsafe it is to support crimes against sanity and sobriety. those that are of corruption are not doing the first world any favours. So in the best interests of the humanitarian goals of the European mainland, I've contacted the European Court of Human Rights ad nauseam. I'd appreciate the United Nations contacting me. That is, of course, if there aren't any, I suppose, of cybercrime obstructing any communications that they're already guilty of with my online content. Those being of the educational field, setting a poor example to children in the field of SPHE and CPSE or SPHE. So education, agriculture and family protection are all being disrespected, unfortunately, and it's not doing this country any good favour in its reputation at home or abroad. So on that note, I think I've said pretty much the point of today's experience of hate crime or ASBO conduct I'm witnessing. And for those people that have upset an innocent child I gave birth to, please don't even consider my farm holdings as a possibility of entry. Trespass is a punishable crime, and any debts associated of these frauds that have offended my family, I would hope that there would be mental health practitioners helping them to establish how unwelcome they are near our properties for the damages, harms and losses they've incurred upon us unnecessarily. So this is truly, it's a dark, dull evening. The sun is hiding, and there are still people offending, unfortunately. So this is just for the interest of the United Nations and all those benefiting from the legislation that originated from my recovery and humanitarian and educational goals for this country, and in the best interests of those in the healthcare provider services. I have 5 ailments I'm treating, and the misconduct perpetrated against the Hippocratic Oath is not demonstrating first class, first world exemplary conduct. It's a sad sign of the times.